Well, it's going to be a long one. Don't say I didn't warn you. You might want to grab some popcorn and a soda for this one. There's way too much information to cover for it to be a short video. Well, hello guys, and welcome back to the channel. Happy New Year. All that good jazz, right? So, this year we're going to get started off. We're going to just jump right back into it. There's no frills, bells, and whistles here. To get back rolling on the new year 2024, and that's going to all involve the motorhome for quite a while. There's a lot of projects that have been just stacking up and kind of getting put off and all that kind of crap, and I've got to get started fixing this stuff. We got some traveling coming up, and last year we were so busy and things just kind of get prioritized, and you know, that's the end of that. So we're going to get started right off the get-go here on the motorhome, and one of the major issues we've been having with the motorhome is this right here, the entry door. If you own a Country Coach, Monaco, any of those, you know that inherently as the coaches get older, we start having a lot of problems with the door sagging, dropping down, and I'll show you that more up close here in just a second. But we actually ran into a pretty bad problem with our door that had nothing to do with that at all. So the only thing that's actually holding our door in correctly is the bottom hinge and the middle hinge. The top hinge, where the pin passes through it between it and the screen door, is broke off, and the screen door has come loose at the top. So anyway, we're going to get started on that. We're going to have to pull the door out. There are no repair parts really for these coaches, for the doors. There are a few people that are starting to come out with some things to help fix the problem. There's some shims that you can buy that go in the bottom, so when you close the door, it actually pushes the door up. I believe there actually is a company now that may be making like aftermarket hinge assemblies. Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure that yet. I haven't really looked into it. My main deal is just to get the door out and see what we're going to have to try to even fix it. I don't know that I can even get a pin. It's just a solid rod, so I may have to end up making one or see if I can fix this one or whatever. But anyway, let's get flipped around. We'll show you more up close with what we're going to do, and we're going to get started on getting the door out of the Country Coach. All right, so let's get inside the coach here, and I'll show you what's going on with the door. Bear with me, I had to get a step stool out here. I'm having a problem with the battery on the coach. Nothing to do with the lithiums. They are 100%. It has to do with the chassis battery, and that's what runs the step. So had to get a little ladder out here to help us get inside. So anyway, let's get boosted up in here, and I'll show you what's going on. And what's happened is there's right here. See if I can pull it apart here. Bear with me just one second. Wasn't prepared for this. Okay, what's happened is right here. You can see where our hinge pin runs through this solid hinge right here. It has broke somehow, and I don't know if it had to have slid down, obviously, to get out of here. But the only way to get in there is to actually pull the door out so we can try to figure out what's going on with this hinge. But this happened to us earlier in the year. We went to hop out one day, and the screen door just, whoops, there went a bushing. So I don't know, you probably can't see it up in there, it's real hard, but you can just barely make out the edge of the pin is right there. So anyway, we're just going to have to get it out and see what we can do. One of the things that involves is this whole door frame assembly will have to come out. It's all essentially one piece. There's that bushing that just fell out of the screen door hinge. Have to hang on to that for sure. Okay, and also, let me get the door closed up here and I'll show you something else also. Push that back up in there, okay. As you can see, I talked about earlier about how the doors start sagging over the years, and you can see that right here in our paint stripes, how the door is sagging down ever so slightly. So when you go to close it now, it just doesn't want to close smoothly enough, and you can see it doesn't close. So to close it, you have to really You have to really get on it, and it shouldn't be that hard. And that's because of how much the door has sagged, and it's actually dragging on the hinges. And on ours, it's really easy to see that. Also, when we go to open the door, it kind of pops and binds. You can feel it right there. It just pops. So hopefully we're going to get all that fixed as well. But anyway, I'm almost 1,000% for sure that our door has never been out of the coach, obviously. So since they assembled these things pretty much right off the press when this paint was done, the first thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to want to very, very carefully score the edge right here with like a razor blade. We're not trying to cut into the paint. We just want to score all the way around the perimeter of the door, because it is actually caulked right here ever so slightly. There's some clear caulking in here. And when they put these doors in, the adhesive or the weather stripping or whatever it is back here is probably adhered to this paint really well. So when we go to pull the door out, we don't want to catch the paint and peel the paint with it. So we're just going to go all the way around the door and score it with a blade. We did have some paint work done on this side of the coach, so that paint right there is fresh, which they did not remove the door to do that, but that's why our caulking bead right here is brand new and very good, well adhered. So we're going to want to get scored all the way around the edge of the door here, very carefully. And like this side is still factory. It has the black, it's almost like a windshield adhesive. Really, it's super. It's still soft, but very, very sticky, almost like a urethane. That's what I'm trying to get out. So we're gonna have to score this right here so that we can get the door out, and then we'll clean all that. We'll get the door disassembled, get the hinges torn apart, try to get the pin out of there, and go from there. Also on ours, if you can see it, again, maybe not, I don't know. Let me get zoomed way up here. You can see how the very top edge of our door right here is pushed up against the frame, okay? And if you look over here on the other side, get up close, you'll see that there's a pretty large gap on this side of the door. All right, again, that tells us that the door is sagging over like this, which again just goes right along with the paint seams not matching up anymore. The door is actually kicking over at the top. So I suspect that our hinges are pretty worn out, and again, there's not a lot of options out there to fix these hinges and the pins and stuff like that. We're gonna have to dig into all that. But anyway, let's get started. Enough talking. My goodness, just get on with the job. Let's get the door out of the Country Coach. Okay, you can see where that, it's kind of hard to see, but that line of urethane sealer is right there. Now we've already cut this and peeled it all back, and this is just the very edge of the door frame right here where you kind of see the white line. It's not a scratch. Actually, that's a lot of wax buildup. we're over the years, the motorhome's been cleaned and buffed on and everything like that, and a lot of it actually kind of wipes off. But anyway, you get the gist of it. We've just cut all the way around the door jamb here using a razor blade. And again, we're not trying to dig and cut through the paint. It's merely trying to cut through the sealant that's around the door. So once we start popping the door away, we don't take the paint with it. So anyway, we pretty much got it trimmed all the way around. Now we're gonna move on to the inside and start getting the fasteners out of it. Really, if you ever see how these things are held in, you'd be like, holy cow, how they even do that? All right, so I want to clarify something about what actually holds the door into the coach. The information that I thought I had, and remember, I've never done this before, guys, either. I'm just learning this on the fly myself, but the information I had that I thought was correct as to what actually held the door in is only partially correct. So we've hopped up inside the motorhome here so that I can show you additionally what I've found. There is a black frame on the inside also that goes all the way around the perimeter of the door. And there is 2 rows of screws that are up and down that frame. The inside row, it's really hard to see there, guys. Anyway, there's a screw here, same thing up here. They're just double screws, okay? The inside row of screws actually screws through the inside frame into the frame from the outside of the door. So you also have to pull off all of these inside frame screws all the way around. I worked on the door outside yesterday. It is day 2, but only a couple hours yesterday. Anyway, I worked on that for a couple hours, and I just could not get the door to budge off the side of the coach. Let me hop back out here and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I've taped up all the way around the door frame there, so that as we start working that door away, you know, we're trying to protect the paint and not scratch it up. And what I'm using is these plastic trim tools to try and get behind the door. And I actually have one here that has a really good hook on it. So what I've been doing is tapping it in behind the door and trying to work it all the way out. And then once I got it out a little bit where I could get an actual flat one up in there, I've got it up in there behind the door now like this, and have worked it all the way up, you know, separating the door off. And so now I have actually got a gap between the door frame and the coach. It was that inside set of screws that was just holding me from getting the door to separate. What is going on here with the camera? So I found you have to take all the inside screws off as well, and we are now slowly getting the door worked away from the coach. My helper is going to go in there and check it out for me. Is it okay? Everything's fine. Perfect. Okay, got it. Anyway, I've now got the frame worked almost all the way up away from the side of the coach, and so that's what I'm going to continue working on now. I've got a couple of more screws inside that I cannot get loose, so I'm going to have to come up with some kind of way to get those loose. They are super tight. Anyways, so we're going to continue to work on that, get the additional screws out of the inside, and then we'll continue moving around the frame, getting it separated off, and we'll finally get this door out of the coach. It was very, very difficult to film everything that was involved in getting the door out, as it is one heck of a job to get the door out. I'm not going to say it's hard, but it is difficult, and it's just very heavy and cumbersome, and the way they got the thing glued in there is unbelievable. But the only thing that holds the door in really is there are 3 screws on each side that go through the side, and then from the inside frame there is a host of screws that goes all the way up, across, and down that pinches the 2 frames together with the bodywork and the metalwork in the coach. Okay, don't forget there is a switch down here at the bottom, and I struggled so hard to try to figure out how to access that and everything like that, and it is near impossible, and I did end up tearing it up trying to get it out, so I'm going to have to address that problem as well. But it ultimately ends up terminated like inside the front area of the coach, so I have to either go in through the generator housing or try to crawl up into this tiny space right here to access it. Don't have a clue what I'm going to do about that yet. We're going to jump right over to the door so I can start talking about the hinges and the problems that they had and what we're trying to go through and fix the situation with the door. The door was manufactured by a company called Avionics. They are no longer in business. Avionics sub-designed out the design of the hinges. That company is no longer in business. So it's just a lost situation on trying to deal with the doors, the Avionics doors. Now, there are country coaches out there that have a completely different door design, a completely different hinge design, and there are fixes for those as they do have a solid pin that runs from the top to the bottom. These are not built like that. I thought they were. I was mistaken on that. They are actually 3 individual 6-inch long 6061 aluminum pins, and I will show you that over here once we get to the hinge. So there's 3 individual pins, and then there are 2 individual pins for the screen door. Now the screen door hinges are made the same way, but they do not wear out because, well, the screen door weighs a third as much as the main walk door. Okay, so let's get over here to the hinge design, and I'll show you what the problem is with those. Forgive me, my garage is an absolute mess. I'm too busy with work and stuff right now to get it all cleaned up. But anyways, here is the actual hinges that come off of the door. This is a complete assembly. It's been completely assembled back with new, well, not new, modified bushings and stuff to go back in here to try to tighten up what happens with these doors. So what happens with these doors is they are made up of a conglomeration of parts. Here is the 6061 aluminum pin that runs down through here, such forth like that, okay? Now, there are individual bushings in each end of each of these individual pieces. All in all, there are 1, 2, 3, 4 individual pieces to these hinges. The hinge pin, 2, 4, 6 nylon bushings plus a nylon spacer makes up one hinge, okay? This inside design right here is actually 2 separate pieces, and it looks like this when it is blowed apart, okay? This is the backer. Here's the center section. These are the 2 screws that bolt it together, okay? It looks like this, okay? What happens is these 2 screws right here face the door jamb, okay? They come in from this side and the door is along this side. So once you tighten this up to the door, you cannot get to these screws, and they come loose over time, and that's ultimately what starts the problem, okay? This piece starts flexing right here on the hinge design, okay? And that ultimately leads to premature wear in here on the nylon bushings. The 6061 aluminum pin starts wearing. You can see right there, it wears on the ends. It also wears in the centers. These doors are very heavy again, okay? What happened to my coach was the top hinge, which was this one. These 2 screws backed out ever so slightly and got loose. It allowed my door to start moving like that. Over all the years of movement, it is a 2004, this is 2024, all right? These screws broke off. They were bottomed out in here and they were galled it up very badly. Even the machine shop that I took these to, had a very difficult time getting the screws out. And what they ultimately had to end up doing was sitting this up in a mill lathe, and they faced off the top surface right here to get the screws down as far as they could flush without taking material off of here. They then set them up in a center lathe stationary bracket, and then they center bored the screws on the lathe because they could not get them centered up properly on a regular drill press and a clamping device. It kept trying to walk on them, so it was very difficult. So this is my first huge shout out here to the folks that are actually responsible for trying to help me get this. It is Samco Enterprises in Houston, Texas, and a huge thank you to Mark Hendricks, Henry, all the guys in the machine shop there. They all collectively got together and kind of worked on this for me in the evenings on their own personal time to try to come up with a solution to fix these hinges. There are no available parts for these hinges, okay? So again, I have a complete assembly here that I have fixed. We have, between the machine shop and me, fixed as best we could. The solution that we've come up with for now is, and it's not the best solution, okay? It's just what we're working with initially to try to come up with a fix to these. What happens is, let me get one out of the box here. There are some little plastic bushings that look just like this, okay? And what they do is they go into the sleeve just like this on either side. And what happens is those bushings wear out, and then the pin gets over, the hinge bends, the pin bends, bolts get loose, yada, yada, yada. It's destructive after that. What we have come up with for an initial design to try to fix the problem is we have gone and made bronze bushings. All right. And this is just a 3/8 inch ID. All right. The pin is 3/8 inch OD, 3/8 inch ID. Okay. The OD of this and this is ever so slightly off a little bit, okay? But they do fit down in here. Whoops, that one just fell right through, see? They do fit down in there perfect, okay? And so what the machine shop did was they took these bushings. I have a whole box of them right here. But anyway, they have milled the center out to 3/8 inch ID, all right? So that it will fit right over the pin here, just like that. I don't know why it's so blurry. Sorry, folks. Anyways, just like that. All they did was mill the inside of this so that it will slip over this. And then again, the idea of this was exactly on with the hinge here. So they just slip down in there, okay? See, just like that. There's actually 2 in there now, right? The other problem we ran into is this pin right here is made out of 6061 aluminum. Now that is great stuff to use. It's soft, it's malleable, it's able to be manipulated and do whatever you want to. Technologies have changed. So what we've done is we've gone to a 7071 aluminum pin, which is just an ever so slightly harder aluminum. And when you really get to digging in on the pin, again, it won't focus. I don't know why it's acting stupid today, but it has actually ate the pins up. So we're going to convert these pins over to 7071 aluminum pins, okay? So between a combination of the nylon bushings and these bronze bushings, we're going to now be able to reassemble the hinge pin. And so kind of the way it works is I have a couple of the nylon bushings that were still intact, and they will actually fit in from either side here. If I can keep them from rolling off, let me just stick it in there. How about that? They will actually fit in from each side, and then one of these bronze bushings will actually fit right between them, okay? So what we're doing is, instead of this pin being supported just on either very end, it's now supported across the whole entire weight of the hinge. And with the 7071 pin and the bronze bushing, the pin will ride on the bushing, and the bushing will actually stay stationary inside of here, which is what we want. We want the pin to turn. Now, if the bushing turns inside the aluminum, it's okay. They're going to be lubed up, and the bronze is a soft material, not quite as soft as the aluminum, so it shouldn't eat anything up. And again, they've lasted from 2004, so I mean, goodness gracious, if we get another 10 years out of them, then I probably won't even have the coach or be alive by then. But what we're going to do today is we're going to start getting the hinges assembled back together. Like I say, this one, the bolts are broke off, so we're going to get this all cleaned up really well, which the machine shop has already done that. Again, thank you, Samco Enterprises, Mark and Henry, phenomenal people. They did give me 2 new bolts, so we're going to get those all reassembled. We're going to Loctite them with just a little tiny bit of blue Loctite. We don't want to use red. I know, we don't ever want them to come loose, but if we use red Loctite, steel bolt, aluminum, it's going to become permanent almost, and we may not would be able to get them back out without having to bore them again. So we don't want to do that. The blue Loctite is plenty enough to keep them from coming loose once we get them tweaked and torqued down in there and everything like that. Moving on to the frame, let's talk about the door frame a little bit here. Of course, there is foam insulation that runs in this track right here. It also runs in this track up here above the top, and there was a piece of foam insulation that runs right across the bottom of that. All that stuff was ate up. There was nothing left of the foam. So we have cleaned this track completely up. We've sanded it all down. It is powder coated originally from the factory, so don't try to sand all the black off of it necessarily. But anyway, we sanded it, we buffed it all down. There were a couple of spots, let me see if I can pick them out still. Roughly right in here and right in here where the screws on my door latch had came loose at one time. With the door leaning over, the screws started gouging into the side of this, and it ate a lot of the aluminum away. Anyway, all that has been refilled with liquid metal. Essentially, it's like a metal epoxy. It's malleable, it's formable, but it's made out of metal. It mixes in a 2-part epoxy. It'd be kind of like JB Weld, really. Anyway, that has all been filled and sanded back down, and we sent the frame out and had it repowder coated black. So there is the finished frame. It is absolutely beautiful now compared to what it used to be. Even down here in the footwell where you step on it, you know, it had wore most all the paint off of it. I'm sorry, powder coating. Anyway, we do have this back from the powder coaters. Looks absolutely gorgeous. Everything has been cleaned off of it. All the I think it was Sika, however you say it, Sikaflex sealant. I mean, it was just gobbed in here where they had glued that door in. That was a job to get the door out. So once we got all the screws out and everything like that, we had to actually pry that frame away from the coach very, very carefully. That's what all the blue tape is for. Was we were using plastic almost like window trim tools and stuff like that to get behind it and just cut all that Sikaflex away. If that's what it was. I'm assuming that's what it was. Probably the same crap they used to glue the headlights in. Tough stuff. Let's see. I have a bunch of it actually laying here on the floor. He grabs a couple of pieces of it. This is what it is. It's just kind of a white, kind of rubbery almost, really. But, I mean, boy, that stuff was stuck on there. Oh, there's a little bit of the old insulation that we peeled off. Again, it's just a 3/4 inch wide, 3/8 inch thick foam insulation, single-sided stick on it. And we've ordered a bunch of that stuff. Should be in here so we can replace all the insulation on it. I think that's about it for now to get you guys kind of up to speed on where we're at. We are going to start the reassembly process here of the hinges. And like I say, as soon as the new pins arrive, we're going to go ahead and change the new pin out to them, because I do have a couple of pins that are ate up pretty bad from over the years, and one of them is actually bent. So again, I do have also they gave me some new spacers, some new nylon spacers. There is one nylon spacer right here that rides between the two bushings, and that's what sets your door height. So these do wear down ever so slightly. My door was off a little bit on the paint stripes. I'm thinking it was just strictly from the wear in them, but just in case, we do have some new bushings here that are about 1/1000th or 2 thicker than these. So if we need to raise the door height up, we can do it with new bushings. What else? Again, this isn't really the best way to fix these yet. All this is a starting point on what we can do to try to fix these doors. We still have a lot of other ideas floating around. Mark had another idea of maybe just a solid bronze bushing through here instead of individuals, but this is just what they had in the machine shop. We didn't really want to get down to ordering a bunch of exotic material because, well, that starts involving a lot of money. And again, these guys were doing this on their own time. So there's no way to fault any of that. And I fully agree with the guys on that. If this is something you want to pursue on your coach, though, you can go to any machine shop that does like industrial type machining, not just like an engine shop. Okay, you need to go somewhere that like legitimately makes parts, mills parts, does gas compression service like cylinder work, engine work, all that kind of stuff like that, because they will have an array assortment of different materials, bushing materials. These are actually, if any of you know oil field work, these are actually a bushing that is out of a Gemini compressor frame that they have modified for me to work, and it's just made out of bronze. And again, it was the perfect OD already. All they had to do was kind of open up the ID just a little bit to 3/8. Very tough though, because it is thin. So again, that's not the ideal situation here. Also, we had tossed around the idea of doing like a poly bushing, something similar to the material that is already used on the plastic bushings. That's another idea we may try. This is a starting point, guys. So if you're having this problem and you just need ideas on what to do and how to go about doing it, that's why we're sharing all this information. Again, on the screen door, the same situation. The hinges are made the basic same way. But again, these don't wear out like the main door does just because of how light it is. All my bushings in here are still intact. The pins look good. Moving over to the main door. Again, this is where the hinge bolts on. You can see where the screw heads are. So once you screw this down to the door, you can't get to those backside screws and they come loose. So you have to take the hinge completely off the door. All this is covered in foam insulation. The only thing that's visible is just this block right here. So all these screws are covered in foam insulation. The insulation is 2 3/4 inches wide by 3/4 inches thick. And I couldn't find anything like that initially. And when I got to delving into the door more, I understand why now. This is not one solid layer of insulation. It is actually 3 individual pieces laid on top of each other. All right, so 2 3/4 wide by 1/4 inch thick. And then there's various cutouts here. This is where the screen door hinge goes. So there's one layer here, right? And then the screen door hinge goes in. And then the next 2 layers stack on top of that. And the same way with the door hinges, all 3 layers of this are going to stack over these screws just up to the main hinge pin. So once I figured out what that really was, again, I went online. I started looking for insulation. I couldn't come up with 2 3/4 inch, but I was able to find 3 inch wide, 1/4 inch thick insulation, and this is 3M, so it's very, very sticky on the back end. So that should help out a lot with that. So all we're going to do in that situation is we'll just lay the foam in here, and then we'll trim it up flush with the inside door. And this is metal, so once we get the insulation laid on here, we can literally just take an Alpha knife, a razor blade knife, and we can literally just come in here and just face this off, okay? The other thing you need to keep in mind is the first layer of insulation is actually recessed. It's flush with the door right here, okay? So that will be laid in there flush with the door. That's the first layer. Up here, we'll trim it off. The next 2 layers actually sit out 1/4 of an inch, as you can see, all right? So we'll have to keep that in mind. The next 2 layers, we just have to offset out a little bit. No big deal. That's super easy stuff to deal with. So that's kind of where we're at right now. I'm still waiting on, like I say, the 7071 material to come in, and we'll talk about that materials, right? The reason we went to a 7071 aluminum material is it a little bit more, we're just going to say tougher. It still bends, it's still plenty malleable, it's still plenty flexible, it's still plenty manipulatable to work with, blah, blah, blah. But it does have a little better alloy in it to help with shear strength. So hopefully that'll keep those pins from bending over time and all that such forth. Once we start going back together, we'll try to get you some better stuff inside the coach so we can show you what we're talking about with the wiring and the switch. The switch. Yes, let me talk about the switch right here. Let me grab it. Sorry, had to get over there and grab the switch. Here is the new door switch. All right, let's get you back down here. Again, I was really struggling with trying to figure out how to get this thing apart. So this is all that's left of my door switch. I literally destroyed it. Anyway, here is a new door switch. It was purchased off Amazon. All it is just it has a common, a normally open and normally closed. There are 3 wires that go to this. I'm gonna have to figure out the wiring on it because literally say I just broke it off. I didn't know any better. This actually goes into the door frame down here on the bottom through this hole right here. These are just plastic inserts. They pop out. So we'll be able to install the new switch from behind like that, and we'll get it all set and everything like that, and then we'll have to deal with how to do the wiring and everything like that. But that's all. That's a very simple switch. Thanks to Dennis Maloney out in Florida. Dennis is a great guy. He owns a Country Coach. Tons of help and everything like that. He actually sent me the link to the switch. You can purchase it off of Amazon. So thank you very much for that, Dennis. Trying to help you guys out with what we're going through and how to try to find materials. But again, any competent machine shop can help you figure out these brass bushings and stuff like that. I'm sorry, bronze or poly bushings, whatever you want to choose. As long as your physical components are not tore up, destroyed, too egg-shaped. This is pretty thin right here, so you really can't bore at anything. If you're that degraded along the way, you may have to look at having to have these pieces made. The machine shop that I used said yes, they could do that. I mean, they literally could go in there and do measurements and drawings and find angles and radiuses and all that kind of hoopla, and they could make these, but it would probably be very expensive, probably well over $1,000 for a full set of hinges. Which I guess in the name of the world, all right, with your coach, I mean, is $1,000 for a set of hinges, or you can't fix your door? $1,000 is probably worth it. So, again, that's it for now. We will share some more stuff as we go along the way, and we will try to get this thing figured out. All right, so our door frame is completely done. We've got our new weather stripping laid in here around the edges, all the way down around the bottom. There's nothing else we can do to that right now until we start getting it put back in the coach. So today what we're going to do, we're still waiting on the hinge pins to show up. Today we're going to get started on working on the door itself. Weather stripping's coming off. We got all the panel off here, wiring harness and stuff like that. So as with everything else on these, the weather stripping obviously is no longer available. And what the weather stripping originally looked like really was this. I've kept a few pieces here, like where it was around the door checks. I can have a template on how to cut out the new insulation. The new weather stripping. Okay, so the weather stripping, let's talk about it. Since it's not made anymore, obviously, this weather stripping, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but it is actually 3 separate layers laid on top of each other. Okay, it is 2 1/4 inches wide and a total of 3/4 inches thick. So what we did was we bought several rolls of 3-inch wide, 1/4 inch thick. We stacked 3 of them on each other. We'll have the 3/4 inch thickness, and we can just literally lay it down. And what we're going to do is we're going to use a big offer knife right here with a long blade, and once we get it stuck down to the door, we can literally cut it off the width. Very easy, okay? So that's how we're going to address that. I've also laid some tape down here and made a few key notes. There's a cutout here. There's 1 solid layer, and then there'll be a cutout in the 2 additional layers for the screen door hinge. This is where it is. This is what it looks like essentially. So there'll be a solid layer, and then it'll be cut out for the screen door hinge to recess. There's also a 45 in this angle on the top 2 layers that are going to come from the back side of this door here, and they're going to angle in at a 45 roughly for the hinge. I've also made one here. There's a notch out here, and another one here where the wiring harness goes through. Again, screen door with the 45 notched on 2 layers. The bottom layer is solid, and then of course where the door check is right here. So anyway, all we're doing, we're just using a wire wheel on an air grinder here, and we're just cleaning off all the old weather stripping. It's glued on really well. This door frame is, I got a magnet here, is aluminum, okay? See, it's aluminum, no sticking. So I'm not worried about the powder coating here where we're taking it off with the insulation. The door can never rust out because, well, it's aluminum. The inserts, steel, all right? So I'm not worried about the powder coating. The door can never actually corrode because there are not 2 dissimilar metals on each other with the aluminum. So all we're going to do is we're going to get this cleaned up really well. We'll go back, we'll repaint the door frame just like, well, we had the door frame was re-powder coated. We will just paint the door itself here, okay? We'll just lay down a good layer of paint. That'll give it some anti-corrosion. It won't never peel off or anything because we're literally clean bare metal. Also, by painting that again, we'll give an excellent adhesion layer for the foam to go on, so it will never peel back off. So that's all we're working on now. This is our striker pin right here that goes into the actual door frame here where the step switch is. This is the striker pin that contacts the step switch. I also had a good recommendation from a very good friend, Dennis Maloney. He's like, while you got that door part, fill these voids in here with like just some foam insulating board. Don't glue anything in. Just lay it full of foam insulating board or some insulation. As in the case right here, where the wiring harness goes through, there's nothing moving in here except the harness. So we can just use any kind of insulation. I have some roll R19 roofing insulation. I'm just going to cut to fit and pack it all down in here. Same thing right here. This doesn't move really. It's just a spring tension. So we'll pack this full of insulation, this cavity all the way up in here. We'll cut a piece to go over our door actuator. Now our door actuator does move right here like this, right? So we'll notch this so that this isn't dragging on the insulation all the time. That way it won't cause a bunch of feathering and stuff in the insulation to fall down and get all caught up and stuff like that. These little openings, of course, are just covered, so it's really no big deal. And then this one right here, of course, has a lot of moving parts in it as well. So we can't really do much with this. There's nothing to snag here, so we may cut a small piece and lay the paper side down so that it can just run on the paper and not really tear the insulation up. Anyways, Dennis said, be sure to insulate those cavities. I said, you would be shocked at how much temperature and road noise passes between these, because this is the outer layer of the door skin right here. So this is just a big old megaphone in here with road noise. He said it'll really help out, make it a lot quieter. So thanks to Dennis for that tip for sure. Also, since I've already got the door out, we had these tinted a couple of years back, and they're mirrored tint. At the time, it seemed like a great idea, and it really is from the outside, because you cannot see through the door. If you walk up and stick your face up to this door, the only thing you're going to see is your little pretty eyes looking back at you. It is mirrored. The problem is, I did not recognize this until after it was too late. The window glass that Country Coach used was also somewhat mirrored, like a bronze finish, from the outside. So it actually reflects. You see my hand in it? It's reflecting. So when you're driving down the highway and you try to look out the window, all you're seeing is your own reflection. It's very, very hard to see out of these now. In the daytime, it's fine. But man, you get it dark, bad idea. So while we got the door out, we're going to scrape all this back off and just do a regular standard smoked tint. So that we can't see through it, and it will help with the heat and everything like that. But anyway, that's where we're at now. We're just going to continue getting all this cleaned off so we can get that seam repainted, and then we can start laying down our new foam weather stripping to get it built back up to the 3/4 inch thick, all the appropriate knockouts and everything like that. This wiring harness is very susceptible, and most of them are broke. And what it is, it's just where the door constantly bends. This wire is hard, and eventually it just breaks off. And all it's for is the power door lock. So when you hit the lock switch inside, it'll lock these two. So we're going to fix that while we got it apart also. The grommets are fine. We were able to salvage all that stuff like that. So nothing wrong with that. The door panel itself that goes on here is great shape. There's no tears in the leather or nothing like that. So we're just going to get it cleaned up, reconditioned with some leather cleaner. I am going to go ahead and replace all of the screw caps. Let me dig one out of here. So where the screws go through to hold the panel on, these are just little screw caps. They look like this. They're just tan. So we are going to go ahead and order all new screw caps so that they will look good. And we were missing a couple of them anyways, but that's where we're at now. We're still moving on with the door project for the Country Coach. So anyways, we're going to carry on getting some more of this stuff cleaned off. And that's where we're at for now, guys. So I'll catch y'all up in a little bit. All right, so we got all our new pin material in. It's just 70, I think it's 7010 aluminum. The other was 6065. I'd have to go back and look at all those numbers again. But anyway, we got those cut to length. They're just 6-inch. We've got them slid in there with all the bushings and everything. And so now what we're working on is we're starting to get the weather stripping laid out. So I've done a lot of measurements. These are the cutouts for all the hinges right here. Got the hinges screwed back on the door. Cut out for the, you know what I'm talking about, can't think of the name right now. Anyway, that's where we're at now. We're getting all the new weather stripping, all the notches and everything cut into it, and then we'll start applying it to the door. We got the door frame painted last night, so we should have excellent adhesion between that and the new weather stripping. So anyway, we're going to continue getting that all cut out, get it laid on, and start layering up. It's 3 individual layers, different various cutouts in each individual layer. A little bit of a pain in the butt, but since none of the stuff is made anymore, this is what you got to do. What a mess. Anyways, moving along, we did get the weather stripping put back on. It is 3 layers, so it's 3/4 inch thick. You can see we got the hinges back on. There are some more holes we still have to make in here. We have to cut the hole for the wiring harness to go through, and then there'll be some trim out where the screen door hinges sit. But the insulation weather stripping, didn't turn out quite as good as I wanted it to. I ended up with a little bit of a jagged edge here, and that's because, well, I don't have a hot knife. And so trying to cut the weather stripping with a razor blade, the adhesive catches the blade. And so you end up with a little bit of a jagged a jagged edge. It's fine. It's just my perfectionist part of it is driving me nuts. This is our little set indent pin right here that will contact the step switch. So that's all back in there already. And I did paint all this a little bit around the edges. Sorry, I got this thing going on today. I keep whatever. Anyways, I'm going to have to sand this back down a little bit. I did catch it a little bit with a razor blade and paint it again so it'll be nice and pretty. Of course, all this is covered up with upholstery, so you can't see that. But also, I got the Sikaflex, the 221 in. I think 4 tubes is plenty. The door frame does glue into the motorhome as well as screw. And they had used white before. I don't know if maybe there weren't a whole lot of colors available. I don't know. But anyways, I got the black so that once we trim the edge of the door out, we'll tape a line and then we'll stick it in there. And then we can just peel the tape and have a nice, real clean sealing line around the door frame with the Sikaflex. And it does screw in there also. That's not the only thing that holds it, but that is some really awesome adhesive that they use for anything and everything in their mother on these things, it seems like. But the door is pretty much done, ready to go back into the frame. But I don't want to attach the frame back to it yet because the most dreaded project I've been waiting to start on, and I just really have been avoiding it altogether, is cleaning all of this stuff up and getting the frame ready to go back in. I did at least come out here and look at it yesterday, and then I just like, no, I'm done. I just can't even begin to even want to start on this. We have to clean, let me get this up out of the way. We have to clean all of this crap off. Everything's got to come out of there. You can see it's a mess down in there. This panel right here does bond onto the coach a little bit. It's kind of a squeeze fit, but I need to get that all cleaned up so I can squirt some adhesive up and around there and get all this sealed back up right here. And then also, not really knowing, you can see how much they use. I mean, it is just piled in there, man. This stuff is layered in there for days. But anyway, not really knowing exactly how to get it apart and how to even access this to begin with. I broke all the switch. I do have the new switch, so that's not a big deal to do that. But I've got to figure out the wiring part of that so that when we install the switch back in there, we can get all that hooked back up and working right. So that's it. Moving on today is just about getting all this cleaned up. It looks kind of rusty. Which it is. I mean, it's got a lot of service rust on it, but the steel is in excellent shape. I'm really surprised because that's a really high water area in there. So anyway, we're going to get all this cleaned up. We'll scuff it all down. See the miles. Look how thick that is. It's just layer and layer of Sikaflex. But we're going to get it all cleaned up, and then we'll throw some paint on that and squirt some adhesive up in there and start trying to figure out the switch. All right, so what we've done is we've got the outside of the frame all cleaned up, where the original caulking and glue and silicone and everything else that they had used over all the years of gluing these frames in. We got all that cleaned off. We just used just a plastic scraper and a combination of plastic razor blades. And we just got all that old seam sealer and stuff off of there. And so I have the frame up in there. It's not glued or anything. It's just stuck up in there. I got a couple of screws in from the back to hold it and get it positioned back where it was. And as you can see, we have a blue outline around the whole entire door now. And what that's for is, it's like, let's see. So you see where this little white line is between the body paint and the door frame. That's where the original seam line was for the, I'm assuming it was like Sikaflex that they used to glue the door frame in. So now that we've got the frame temporarily installed in there, which is why we installed it, we've now ran a line all the way around the door, just on the edge of where that seam sealer was. All right, so that way we can pull the frame back out. We can get all our caulking and filler and glue and whatnot all spread all around there, nice good bead on it. And then when we squish the frame back up to it and we tighten it up, see it it pinches it. It just pulls these two pieces back together, the screws in here from the inside, and it's going to squeeze that frame and pinch the body and everything like that. And then the theoretical trick is, hopefully it should ooze all that excess out here along the edges. We can then smooth it out, clean it all up, and peel the tape off, and we have a nice, perfectly fine caulk line around it in black, which will hide. You can still see a little bit of the black that was originally on there. Anyway, that will hide all of that where the body line paint does not go up to the frame. That's how they did these. Once you pull this frame out, there's no color behind the frame. They had all this installed before they ever painted the coaches. They would just tape up along all this stuff, paint the coach. So this clear line where they cleared the coach and everything is a hard line. So you have to be kind of careful when you're cleaning that off, because you don't want to scrape and pinch the clear on the scraper and start knocking a bunch of the clear off. So that's it. That's where we're at now. It's just a test fit. Make sure everything's going to fit right, which it does. It looks beautiful. I'm really happy the way the powder coating turned out. It looks so much better than before. Now what we have to figure out is the really tricky part, which is where the door switch goes back in here and the wiring that I was talking about earlier. I'm still not exactly sure how I'm supposed to get that thing in there, because the door switch comes in from behind the frame and it is physically impossible to get back there. I'm almost sure, I know the switch has to be pre-installed before you stick the frame in, and then you kind of rotate the switch in there and boom, push it up there, it gets there. The wiring for it can be accessed through this little tiny hole, which that's the wiring down there. I've got it pulled out of the hole through the body and just dropped down there, because I've still got to try to figure out how the wiring was. There's 3 wires, and I don't know how it was originally wired, so I'm gonna have to figure all that out too. And then also, where is it at? Right in here somewhere, there's another wiring harness that used to pass through the door. This is the harness for the power door locks and stuff inside the door. So that shouldn't be too bad. I'm going to just take and pre-wire it from the door side, because the door has to be reinstalled into the frame before you put all that back in. Because remember, all these screws come in from the back side. So I'm just going to make a little wiring harness, and once we go to put it in there, we can just shove it through into there, and then we'll try to figure out how to get up in there and connect all that back together so our power door locks will work again like they're supposed to. What happens is, over the years of opening and closing, this wiring harness gets brittle, and it just breaks off eventually, and that's all that was wrong with ours. I mean, I really don't care about having the power locks, but going through all this trouble, I'm going to fix them while we got it out. So anyway, that's where we're at now at this point. What we need to do now is get the frame back out and get the door and stuff assembled back into the frame, get our wiring made, finish up our insulation inside the door and stuff like that, and then we will be ready to start gluing and get that dude back in there. Okay, we have come across our first hugest mistake I have made in doing the door, and it's not going to be a total problem, but it's something I should have thought about ahead of time that I did not. Okay, so I put the door back in the frame, and we've got all the hinges screwed back up tight with all the bolts in them, okay? Now, the gap right here is absolutely beautiful now that the hinges are all fixed with bushings and everything like that. My door gap was always off because the hinges were always loose. So that part is absolutely fantastic. However, I made a huge mistake. These bolts that hold the door hinge into the frame are countersunk. They can only go in one position. So no matter what you do, the hinge is going to be right there. There's nothing you can do for up and down or like this. They're self-centering. So what has happened is, if you'll notice, my door is now all the way on the bottom of the frame. And up here at the top, we have a really big gap. And the reason for that is I messed up. When I took the hinges off the door originally, where the hinge actually bolts onto the door is just a flat plate. And that sole plate moves in the door. I did not mark where those were at, so I don't have the door lined back up on the hinges properly. Wouldn't be a huge deal necessarily, but you got to remember they put these motorhomes together completely before they paint them. So for them, when they put these doors in there, it doesn't matter how it comes out. They're going to lay all the graphics and they're going to paint it all at once. But for us going back together with it, we have to be sure and get the door height set properly in the frame so that our paint lines match. Unfortunately, I have created my own problem with that, because you have to remember, all this stuff has to go together all at the same time. So bear with me, this door is extremely heavy, but I'm going to try to open it up in the frame so I can show you what the other problems associated with that is. First problem I ran into is my door is way too low, as you can see by the deadbolt right there. All right, so my deadbolt will not lock anymore, because the door is sitting way down and it won't line up with the opening anymore. The door has to go up, okay? The other problem is, and hold on just a second, let me get this open. It is so heavy. But it opens so smoothly now. Anyway, the other problem is, and I'm not really gonna be able to show you this totally under there, I'll try, but you gotta remember that the weather stripping goes over the top of the hinge on the door. So I've already put all the weather stripping on, not thinking the problem was I had the hinge in the wrong place to begin with. So, unfortunately for me, let me get the door closed back down here. But it closes so good now though. Unfortunately for me, I've just wasted all of that weather stripping because I'm going to have to cut it all back off the door so that I can loosen the hinge mounting plates on the door all the way down, and I can adjust the door up and then retighten them. But you can't get to all four of those with the hinges assembled. So I have to take the hinge completely out of the frame, disassemble it from the door, adjust it, put it all back together, blah, blah, blah. It's a nightmare the way they built these things. So, long story short is I screwed up when I put it back together. When I took the hinges off the door, I should have marked the seal plates where the hinge was so that I could put them exactly back in the same spot. Live and learn. Anyways, back to square one, disassemble all the hinges, adjust it, put the door back together. Okay, so we made one little trial fitment with the door frame when we put it back in the coach without the door and stuff in it. And when we had it back in there and we put a couple of screws in it to locate it, we went ahead and laid a seam of tape down the side here. And on the motorhome body itself, we marked all the graphics lines so that we could compare it once we hung the door back into there. And as you can see, our graphics lines look great. That was what I was kind of worried about, was whether we would get the door oriented back in the frame to match the paint stripes on the coach, but that looks good. We did run into one little problem though when we tried to test fit the frame, and that was with the step switch, which is right here in my hand. Okay, the step switch goes in through here like that, okay? And you see how far it sticks out around the frame. I don't think we had the right step switch, and when we went to test fit it in there, not really knowing any better, we actually broke the brand new switch that I had already bought. The switch has the correct common, normally open, normally closed configuration, but I think the body of it is completely different than what Country Coach originally used in here. So after we did that, which you can get these on Amazon, it's $9, okay? So I'm not out like a ton of money, but I was out several days worth of work again. So what we did was the frame has to kind of go in like this around it with the switch in there, and the switch actually goes into this little opening right here. It's going to sit up inside that cavity right there. So this is just all fiberglass. Well, that's not entirely true. It's not all fiberglass. There actually is a 1-inch piece of square box tubing that is behind all of that I did have to take my cutoff wheel and notch out a little bit of that to actually open that part of it up also. The fiberglass tub, this is all one piece. They slide it in there. So the original hole that was in there was kind of small. So all we did was we just opened it up bigger, right? So now once we get the switch mounted back in the door frame and we come in, it'll come in like, we put the frame in like this and the switch will just go boop right up in there like that. So not a big crisis, but something we did learn We should have been more careful. We were trying to put the frame in there, not knowing, and we pulled on it. Anyway, we just broke it. It's just plastic, right? So, but anyway, we got the opening all done. It's ready to get the door back into there. All the bare metal that was around the door frame, we treated with rust killer. We got it all down in there between the body and everything like that. The metal looks great once we got it all cleaned up, but yeah, I still have it all taped up. We have some weather coming, so I wanted to get all that dry with the rust killer, and so we can get it covered back up. But now we're down to the step literally of trying to get the door back in. All right, so in continuing to get ready to stick the door back in, what we've done is all this is held in by the door frame. All right, we'll put some Sikaflex sealer back between the body here around it, and then once we push the door frame in and clamp all this back together, that'll seal all this opening. There was a lot of weather stripping that they had piled all down in here, and all that came out with the Sikaflex, the sealer. You can see it's pretty darn thick, that stuff they had in there. We've trimmed that off straight here along with the fiberglass tub that goes in there, and we just cut some more of this 3-inch weather stripping that we had, and we've gotten it all tucked back down in here, so that's weather stripping back down in there. And then once we squeeze the body up against it, that'll seal us up from the outside. So we're just going to get all this back in there like it's supposed to be. We'll squirt some seam sealer down in here between all of this, and then when we squish the door frame up against it, that'll seal it all up nice and tight. Well, good morning. As you can see from the previous little time lapse there, when we put the door in, it got very late and very dark on us, but we have some weather coming in, and I really wanted to try to get the door back in before that, so it was just a late night. Anyway, it looks absolutely fantastic. I mean, look at the graphics lines. I mean, we couldn't have asked for a better fit and finish. I mean, it looks beautiful. I do have some cleanup work to do, as you can see here. I got a little bit of the Sikaflex over it, but the seam turned out great. It molds right in, back with the door. The best thing is this right here. No more popping, no more leaning. Everything works great, just like it's supposed to. Ah, man, living life. And when you close it now, it's like, that's the way. It has never closed like that since we've owned it. We've always had to just slam the crap out of it and get up there at the top. Look at that. The seam is perfect. When you open the door, it doesn't pop over into it. Oh my God, it's absolutely beautiful. Thank the Lord. But now for the bad news. I get to take the whole thing back out again. What? We got it all put together, and the switch broke it again. The switch does not work. I don't know what to do. We've tried every way possible to try to get that. We cut the opening out bigger. We were careful last night when we put it in. I don't know what the deal is with the stupid door switch. So it is what it is, you know. I mean, learn and live, right? But the hinges look great. They're sitting perfectly on the bushings, just like they're supposed to. There's nothing loose. It looks beautiful. It is perfect. Other than the fact that we broke the door switch again. So we're gonna dig into that a little bit more, see what we can come up with on that, and I'll let you know. Okay guys, so investigating this whole switch debacle that I've been fighting ever since we started on this door project. So as you know, we've already broke 2 switches trying to figure out how to get this thing in there correctly, and see this one's broke again. I have, well, hey, it's a learning curve, guys, right? Nobody really knew how to do this. So I have found that if I remove my right front headlight here, and a little bit of a tangent here for you Country Coach owners out there, live and learn right here, okay? My headlights bolt in because I fixed them correctly. They're not glued in, so I can remove my headlights as often as I like to. So enough of that. Another video, I'll put a link here somewhere. Anyways, I have found, after digging back here behind the headlight, kind of hard to see there, there's a little access panel right there. And after digging off about 9 feet of Sikaflex, it actually unscrews and we can access the back of that switch. So live and learn. Anyways, if you get in there behind your headlight, and if you fix them correctly, you can remove your headlight. Anyway, you can access that to pull that cover off so we can get to the switch. So that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to finish digging out the screws. I'm going to get that cover off and we can get the switch out of there that I just put in, which it's broke. You know? Anyways, that's how we access the switch. So I'm going to get that off right quick and we'll get the switch out. Moving on. All right, so this is going to be it for the final of the door install. The only thing that we had left to do, really and truly, was get the step wired back up on the new switch. Now, that was a little tricky, not hard. I didn't have any idea how the wiring was when it came apart, because when I pulled the door out, well, I broke all that stuff. So I used a very scientific, proven method to help deduct how to rewire it, okay? Here it goes. Bear with me. Let's hop right over there. All right, here comes the very complicated scientific method of determining how we did this. We know that our switch has 3 wires, a common, a normally open, and a normally closed. The original harness out of the motorhome for the steps only had 3 wires. So we know that one of these has to be common, one is normally open, and one is normally closed. Here it goes, very complicated. This is how I did it. 2 of the wires were the exact same gauge. The 3rd wire was an oddball size, much larger. So I literally started out by saying, I'm going to use that as the common wire. I then only had a 50-50 shot of how to hook the other 2 wires up. The steps were either going to work correctly or they were going to work backwards, right? You either open the door and they're going to close, or you open the door and they're going to open. That's the only choices we had. I guessed on this wiring. The only thing I had was the oddball size as being the common. All right. So the finished product of that is voila. Works like a champ, just like they're supposed to. Ah, man. And so we even have, so right now they're going in and out with the door opening and closing. As you know, you turn the step switch on. If you close the door, they will stay out. There you go. Okay, the only little problem that I did have was, let me jump down here. My little contactor pin that is in the door that pushes on the switch here. I'm sitting on the steps, I'm not going to push the switch, okay? The little contactor that pushes the switch, with all the new installation, all the door hinges being tight, the door is back where it's supposed to be, the little contact in there would not push on the switch enough. It was kind of intermittent. Sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't. So what I did was I took a piece of 3/8 stainless tubing and I cut it. I cut it kind of long so where it would fit all the way into the insulation up against the door frame. And then I trimmed it down to where it just barely does poke out. That way I have a little extra reach. Get off the steps. So when I close it, that little bit of extra reach works just like that. That's all it was. All right. That's the only problem that I had initially, really and truly, was just getting the length of the striker pin where it would contact the switch correctly. So now, there it is. And that is it. Thank the Lord Almighty. The door is installed. All the framing is back in it. The only thing we have to do now is a little bit of tidy up work. I need to make the permanent connections on that. But before I do that, I need to put my little access covering back over it. You probably can't see it. Maybe inside there. Let me zoom way in. Kind of hard to see, but all right, let's try this again. I got my light back out here so we can actually see the back of the switch right there. There's a little access hole so we can access the back of that switch. So before I make the permanent wiring connections, I need to slip the wire back through this little cover. I'm just going to put some more of the Sikaflex around it, glue it back on. It had some screws in there, but they weren't really holding anything. I don't know exactly. They just had it screwed to some more rubber, but anyway, we're just gonna put some Sikaflex on there, squeeze it back up there, and that's gonna hold it nice and permanent forever. It's just rubber matting, so if I ever have to get in there, I'll just tear it back off. So that's it. We'll make our get that sealed up. We'll make our permanent wiring connections, get all this zip tied and tucked back up in there in the harness where it's absolutely supposed to be. We'll get the headlight put in. I did need to aim the headlight back up just a little bit after we installed those, so this is a prime time to go ahead and get that done. Since they're out, I'll go ahead and pop the other one out. I need to put a couple of little washers underneath the bottom there so I can aim them up a little bit. They're just a little bit too low. But anyways, that's it. The door, the hinges rebuilt, new bushings, new pins, new weather stripping, new door switch and everything like that. Everything is absolutely good to go now. All done, fixed. Let me know if you got any questions. It is going to be a very long video. I understood that to begin with, but it's just that was a heck of a project. Till next time, we got more Country Coach projects coming very soon. Working on some electrical stuff back here in the bays. I got a little awning issue up here, of course, because they're carefree awnings, and that's all you ever have with these is issues. We got some window stuff coming. We're gonna work on the fogged windows. That one's good. We gotta do one of the front ones, one on the other side. Got some changes to some wiring, like I said, going on in here. We do have to replace the starter motor battery. I got ripped off on the one that we bought originally. They charged me $1,400 for an $800 battery, but I guess that's part of that new inflation stuff. So we got ripped off when we had a bunch of repairs done on the motorhome. Kind of like this whole door install. The reason I had to do it myself to begin with was the shop that I took this to in Nacogdoches that works on these things. They're supposed to be really good at Country Coaches. I won't tell their name or anything like that. But anyway, they charged me $450 to fix this door. And when I went back to pick the motorhome up, they told me, oh, we can't fix it. And then they charged me $450 to tell me that they couldn't fix it. So anyway, lesson learned again on that too. You just got to be careful, guys, where you take these coaches. I mean, they will rip you off in a second for things that you can do yourself. Granted, this door was a pretty significant project, but me and thankfully my buddy Robert, thank you, sir, very much. Anyway, I mean, we did it ourselves. I mean, just be careful, guys. Do a lot of stuff yourself if you can on these things. There's no reason for you to be ripped off. If you just absolutely do not have to be, don't take these coaches in to have them fixed. See you guys on the next one.